Good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the Public Works and Fire Station Ad Hoc Committee regular meeting. I'll begin by calling this to order, and to start off, will you please stand for a moment of silence in the pledge? Thank you, and the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next business is to select a chairman.
I move you.
Third.
So I have a motion from John Fergus. And
He seconded.
and second, Mayor Schechter. All right. Got that.
I move we close nominations.
A second.
Took care of that. We might as well take this to a vote. We'll make this easy. You want to do it by member?
Yeah. John
Okay.
Fergus?
Yes.
All right. Mike Chase?
Yes.
David Schechter?
Yes.
And Steve Osborne.
Yes.
Congratulations.
4-0. That passes.
That's the hard
Yes,
part.
we know who the chairman is. The next one on there is public comments. So this is public comments for things that are not on the agenda. As I would say, if anybody has anything, the floor is open for things that are not on the agenda. Hearing none, bring it back. Next item up is introduction of W&J Senior Contract Manager Dan Herman for construction schedule.
And Steve, just to make a correction, it should say design schedule, because we're in
Okay.
design. He's a construction manager, so I just got it. So we're in design phase right now.
Got it.
So I'm Dan Herman with W&J Construction, Senior Project Manager. I've been with W&J for 13 years. Been a resident of Satellite Beach on and off since 1978. Went to Holland to Lawrence Satellite, so I'm very, very proud to be a part of this project. My parents even have a history going back into the 60s at Patrick Air Force Base, so this is my home, and just want to do the best possible job that we can for you. So, and why we're here today is to go ahead and get your input as far as the design phase for this project for Public Works and for the fire station. And to that end, we have our design team here today. I'll be introducing Greg Stark with Stark Architecture. We also have Eric Giuliano from Bowman Consulting on the civil side. Right now, what we're looking at is trying to finalize some of our design details, because once we have a floor plan and elevations in check, we're about 10 weeks out from having design drawings that can proceed with pricing. And we're tracking about the same on the civil side right now as Eric's working through some stormwater issues. So with that, I'd like to introduce Greg.
Well, thank you for having us here today, and my name is Greg Stark. I'm the principal at Stark Architecture. Our firm was established in 2007. I've been working in the Space Coast area in the building industry since 1997, and have been involved in many municipal small government projects. Our firm has continuing contracts with Brevard County, Brevard Public Schools, Indian River County. We've just completed the design and started construction on the Jolie Smith Community Center in Cocoa, in the city of Cocoa. So that's just a little bit about us. Today, for me, is about listening. And so what we've done so far is put together some of the programming documentation. We had done 2 meetings so far with staff where we've gathered information on the different spaces that will go into the building, we've compiled those and quantified those, so we have a general idea of how big this building will be. And so far, we're tracking toward about a 20,000 square foot building. That will not fit on the site as a single-story building, so we are looking at a two-story building. And so we've also done some diagrams for how those spaces relate to one another. We call it a space adjacency diagram. And then we've also put together an owner's project requirements document, which consists of a preliminary code analysis and lists all of the features of the building and things like the wind code that we're following, whether or not the building will have a generator, it will. And so with that, we've also put together some images, and the images are really just to get a sense from our clients, from you, to get kind of the gears turning on thoughts about the aesthetic design of the building. And so we did put together some of those images that I know Liz has forwarded to the committee. So that's one of the things that we're really looking forward to hearing today is your thoughts on those images and how that will speak for the city to the public of this building. So,
Okay.
with that,
I got some of those.
Do we have any extra copies of the images? Images, do we have any extra copies of them?
Do you have any copies of the pictures?
Let's do it this way. You move stuff down and we can.
I just gave you a chapter a packet. It's,
Oh, there you go.
Is it inside here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's in there. Yeah, it's in there.
Hello, my name is Eric Giuliano. I'm with Bowman Consulting. I manage the office in Melbourne, Florida, just over the bridge. I've been working at that office for the last 14 years. We have continuing services with City of West Melbourne, Rockledge. We're doing some work for Cape Canaveral, so we do a lot of municipal work. At this time, we sort of just have provided the city with a conceptual site plan. We've ordered our studies, we've ordered our land survey, which we should be getting the final survey back this Friday. We've ordered our geotech so we can do our stormwater analysis. We should be getting that within the next couple weeks. We're just looking for any kind of feedback from, Public Works and Fire related to the site, what they want to see, do they want a bigger storage area, is the parking okay? We haven't cranked up on any landscaping yet, so obviously that'll be an iterative process, I'm sure. And we're just looking forward to, your input and working with the city. And we're here for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Move on to number 8, which is
What's that plan?
Liz.
Yes.
You're up next.
So, while this is all taking place, the city's also has applied for a Complete Street grant to do some improvements on Jackson. And those improvements are to work with the school board in developing an interlocal agreement where they've agreed to give us 15 feet of their property and move the fence back, which will then enable the city to enlarge the sidewalk, do some landscaping, and much-needed drainage improvements. So while we have W&J, and I think I said this to you all too, this map, looking at drainage for our site on Jackson and trying to maximize as much off-site that we can in working with the school board so that we can maximize the construction of the site itself and not have to put these ponds. Instead, it's more building, it's more parking, it's, or more landscaping, but it's just not a pond on site. So W&J has been working with us and David King, our engineer, and our stormwater department in coming up with what that looks like. So when you're looking at landscaping or color schemes, what the goal would be is to try to stay consistent with the corridor. So, you know, if we decide to do benches or street light lamps, we want to stay consistent from the Jackson site and carry that through the corridor. So I want to just keep that in the back of your mind, if that all comes together, that's something that you may want to be considering when you're giving your thoughts.
Okay.
And so with that, more discussion. And staff is here too, and just to let you know, they have been at every meeting, they have given so much input, because that's what these experts here are developing their plans based on their needs, size, office space, you know, so, any questions for staff too? They've been along for the whole process.
I've got one question.
I just wanted to interject that just some of the city's sustainability goals would be part of this as well. So you'll see, is Nick here? Or, yeah, so Nick's in the back. So part of our sustainability plan is that new buildings strive to obtain LEED certification. I don't think we're going to be able to afford the actual certification, but we're going to strive to those concepts. But then the biggest issue is the solar, and they're preparing the building to be photovoltaic ready on the roof. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of those goals as well. And there's going to be parts of, you know, of the building itself that we have to make choices from a cost standpoint, and that's just a fact from being a public building. So to just keep that in mind too. So we'd love to build a beautiful example of green technology, but we don't think we can afford to do that. So we have to be cognizant of that.
I do have a couple of questions that just to kind of get a sense. Already been mentioned, two-story. Are we talking about one building or two buildings?
One building.
Combined Public Works Fire?
Yes.
Okay, that takes care of one question. Then you mentioned two stories, because I'd done some, a year or two ago, some back of the envelope type stuff, and it was pretty clear you're going to have to go up. The more you went up, the more green space or whatever space you
I need to be on the
had.
mic. Just, when
If
you
you've
guys
gone to
answer
two
questions, I
stories-
need you to be on the mic, I'm sorry.
If you've gone to two stories, you're already going to have to do an elevator or something, ADA and all that business. Is there any reason not to go three stories, put your bays on the bottom and go? I'm just trying to get a sense here, because, you know, most of the city is single-story houses. You know, you'd say if you had all the room in the world, you'd do single-story and match. Well, that's not the case, but you're up there near the condo anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. So the question is, have you considered, and that's kind of outside our jurisdiction, I guess, but it's just a question because it changes the way a building looks.
Sure. So when we did the programming and we talked about the individual spaces that make up the building, we found that the ground floor spaces that have to be on the ground floor because of vehicles, for example, make up about half of the footprint of the building, or half of the total square footage of the building. So it did come to a nice split between what could be on the second floor and what has to be on the first floor.
Okay, so what you're saying then is, if I understand, you need a certain square footage for bays.
And shops.
And whatever else, yeah, the stuff that needs to be on the ground floor. And once you've done that, you're already big enough that you just plop the rest of it on top.
Slightly greater than 50% of the total building.
Okay.
At that point.
Okay.
And yes, and you're right, most of the buildings around are either one or two stories, so it will fit the fabric of the city nicely at that height.
I guess another thing in your the inspiration figures, I did notice a fire tower. Is there any reason that you couldn't design the building so that you had you're going to have some kind of exit from the second floor? Can you incorporate so that can be used as your training tower?
We're already looking at that, yes, so we would have because of the, let's say, the footprint of the building is 10,000 square feet, it's a two-story, 20,000 square foot building, and those bays are roughly 75 feet in depth. So the length of the building is then maybe 120, maybe 125 or something. So then you have two stairwells at each end of this building, and one of which we are looking at how we can incorporate that with the tower, with a tower, so that we can have the training capability. And it probably will come down to price, because I think the request was for a 35 foot, so basically another story at the tower.
And I could add too, John, the reason for one building was to maximize the one elevator. So we didn't have to have two elevators. So you'll have a shared entrance, you'll have one elevator going up to the office space, one side is fire, other side is public works.
Okay. And that works well anyway when you're there during a storm, so everybody's together.
And that was another thing we asked them to look at, is a makeshift EOC in the event of, a storm. So, as far as removable walls, so we can make a command center, and they can utilize the kitchen at fire. So we're this is multi-use uses. What I would call industrial buildings, in Jackson. So.
Okay.
Which I think in most cases these days, you see that when you're building, even like Cocoa Beach, when they built their fire department and stuff like that, where you're combining multiple city functions into one facility, getting the most use out of it. Obviously, we know in Satellite Beach, it's not like we have land everywhere to build individual office buildings for all this. So obviously that makes that. Talking about sustainability type items, obviously there is an awful lot. I know we talked about some of those things even with doubles. I think Orlando PD, when they built their new facility over there, they had landscape on the roof, capturing rainwater and using it in other places were some of those things that were incorporated into that type of stuff. I think that's probably, even from an aesthetics point of view and the building itself, as we all know at Satellite Beach, we really pride ourselves on sustainability. That's something we really push. That's what the residents want us to push. So I think it's going to be, if not totally involved, it needs to have the appearance of looking as sustainability as possible, right? I mean, that's a very big item from here. Aside from aesthetics, I would, again, just hope that, you only get to build this once. It's probably going to have to be here for 50 years. Talking to staff, I hope, yes, we got all the staff input, because, you don't really get a do-over. Once you lay the concrete's concrete, it is what it is. I would just make sure, too, as an aesthetic point of view, we make sure that...
So it's been here for two.
Two. True. I would just say from an aesthetic point of view, too, we just want to make sure that that doesn't get in the way of functionality and those type of things, as well as looking like something that belongs each side from that point of view. Anybody else have any further questions? Mike?
Yeah, kind of focusing on what our task is at hand within the 6 meetings that we're going to have. Lagoon-friendly landscaping, sustainability, architectural design, and access management. So there's 4 targets that we're going to be looking at. Our meetings need to be in some type of cadence with the planning accordingly. And I would assume that some of the 4, they're going to be in some type of order. So a lot of overlap, but architectural design needs to be part up front. Access management, I'm not sure exactly what that entails yet as far as our role in access management. Sustainability, we talked about solar. I would assume some type of backup generation and backup electrical and backup water sources. Other than that, I need some ideas on what to focus on for sustainability. We have great experience. Both of you rattled off some large numbers working with some municipalities, 14 years, and obviously, your advice is going to be extremely helpful in moving forward and what we're going to be trying to tackle with just these 4 areas here. So I think I'm personally grasping at what I can grab hold of on this to be effective in being a member.
Well, I think obviously, from our point of view and trying to do this, obviously, we probably need to, again, whatever footprint we already have, it'd be nice to know what the staff inputs were, what is it they're really wanting, what they look like. I mean, obviously again, I know from a sustainability and landscaping, obviously, it's got to be functional. Can't get in the way. I mean, obviously, we're not going to plant a tree where a fire truck can't get out in and around as far as landscaping goes, right? We're not going to have gutters or solars or something that's going to be hanging away or become an issue or an airborne something or other, again, because this is obviously a fire facility. So I guess from that point of view, I'm kind of like you, Mike. I mean, obviously, I need to get all the background, get what we have so far so we know what we're looking at, and then maybe help direct it from there.
I think that will come clear as we move forward, but I think what the team needs from you today is some idea of what architectural look you would like to see the building in. I think the functions are pretty well set out already with the staff has already given that input, and they have, a pretty good idea of what the staff needs. But they can't really put together a building design unless they know what we're looking for architecturally and stylistically. They can't really go into a design mode until they have that answer. So they just need an idea generally of what look you're looking for. And am I saying this correctly?
Facade.
Yeah, the facade.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay, both I and my wife went through the inspiration. And immediately it struck me, these samples, whatever you want to call them, there's an awful lot of glass. And I don't think the staff is going to want to be in a building with huge expanses of glass when something comes through at 140 miles an hour. So my guess is, but you've got to balance. You don't want a crypt either. So that was something I was kind of interested in deferring to staff in their idea of the glazing part of it. The other thing is that when I looked at it, this one on the front page, the lower left, with a sloping roof, that seemed, and what immediately struck both of us was solar. Okay, especially it made that a shed roof instead of a peaked roof. But I don't know what that does with the hurricane business. So you've got some interesting things there. And the other one on the second page is the upper right. Again, it's a very simple building. The only issue there is I don't think anybody's thinking about transparent bay doors, unless somebody's making them out of Lexan and it's cheap or something. But I don't think that's the case. Basically, I guess, well, I do have a question too. Is the idea probably to use masonry? You're not going to use wood, obviously. So would it be concrete, block, or has anybody gotten into that realm yet?
Right now, we're considering concrete masonry versus tilt wall, which is cast.
Yeah, it's just really, but they're both the same thing. They're both big slabs of concrete, whether it's in place or tilt. Because I see that as being important, because the question would be, how do you get a nice finish on either of those at minimum cost? In other words, if you put a brick facade on, in fact, on the fire station now, it has a brick facade. And if you look at it carefully, you'll see it's peeling away from the wall in places and stuff. So that's probably not what you want. And I presume it costs a lot to do it compared to some other things. I don't think you want to just slap some Sherwin-Williams on it either. So there's,
So traditional brick is very susceptible to the brick ties, and as those brick ties rust and deteriorate,
And you're only
bricks that
1,000
start to
feet
fall
from the
apart.
ocean, yeah.
And then the stucco brick has the same problem. A lot of stucco systems use galvanized metal, expanded metal lath, which of course can rust as well. And so we would look at some sort of cladding that might be a synthetic stucco system or a fiber cement panels. Like that's what hardy board is, for example. Especially if we go with a more traditional architecture, that can be a good finish on the exterior of the building.
Is there, and again, I don't know costs and stuff like that, is there a way when if you did tilt-up holes, can you actually cast them so there's like a pattern on it, and so
You can.
you basically, all you do is put some kind of really durable coloring on it, or even leave it as
They have
raw?
forms that can create bricks, or you can have thin bricks that are cast into, they're basically like tiles that look like brick that are cast into the concrete panel, or you can also have siding that's a mold that then gets like a silicone mold that gets removed from the panel as it gets tilted up into place. So there are a variety of options for, and certainly with the corrosive environment of the salt air is something that we have to be very cognizant of as we go forward. And if I may, I know there was some questions about sustainability and maybe what things may or may not be included. A lot of what we do in our design of our buildings now, it's just ingrained now to do all LED lighting fixtures, all low-flow plumbing fixtures, to try to specify landscaping materials that don't require irrigation beyond establishment. So some of those things will certainly be part of what we do. Other things like there's something called heat island effect, and so that's just where you're just absorbing a lot of heat onto your site and radiating that back out. So a lot of times we do reflective roof surfaces, so that's why we end up doing a lot of white or silver roofs. We also have, during construction, waste stream management, so we'll separate all of the waste that comes out of the construction process into recyclable materials. We did grass parking on another project recently. It's a stabilized parking surface that just allows a lot more permeable surface.
Is that the one in Montgomery?
That was the Space Coast Health Foundation up in Rockledge.
Yeah, you're up on the dune there, so I would think, I live about the same distance from the ocean. I went down 6 feet before I hit the water table there, at our place anyway. And you take a 5-gallon bucket of water and you dump it on the lawn, and it disappears. You know, so you've got a lot of, unless there's a swale or something right through there. And that brings up a thought too on the landscaping. I know the fire department, part of their culture, if you want to call it that, has been like at Christmas, they have a big to-do there and other things. So I would think that you would want to have sufficient paved and unpaved landscaping for them to be able to whatever, you know, those type of public activities. And then as far as storms go, I suspect you don't want trees that'll come down that'll cause you problems. Now, are they going to have underground utilities, electric especially to this?
I'm sorry?
Underground electric to it?
Yes.
We require that now. It's a code requirement.
Okay.
And just a thought for the committee, you know, these companies and W&J have done multiple municipal buildings around the county. And I'd be glad to get some photographs of fire stations, woodwork buildings.
I was actually going to get to
So
that.
that you can kind of get a
I did the
sense.
same thing. So I actually just looked for beachside firehouses.
Right.
And to get that kind of feel and look, and it's funny, most of them had 2 stories to them.
That's cute. I like that.
So I had a few of those, and they talk about that, and most of them are more recently built, and kind of going what you're saying to give us an idea of
Too stoppy.
what we're looking for, and, you know, even up to the flat.
You can go brick, you can go beachy, you can go Key West.
Correct.
You know, so there's, I gave, my thought was the Realtors building on Pineda, that they just built, that right there on the corner of Wickham and
Right.
the Causeway, you know, with the shutters and just that kind of look. So I'll be glad to get that together for you for the next meeting, and we can see how far along too we are on the site plan look, so that you can start thinking about landscaping.
But
Or give you
this
ideas,
one-
and then,
That one's very similar to this. Like
Right.
if you just took that, you know, that look, it's very similar, because that, like they said, they would be doing a white roof, you know, to be, as you know. So if you all like that beach vernacular, that gives them a thing to go for, you know, because that's what they're looking for.
And I think-
Some decision on
Yeah.
what the building is going to look like so they can get started on design. And then we can get, you know, in the future meetings, we can zone in on the,
colors.
by then you should have a concept plan, I think, in at first, like the site design, I think, once we get Jackson settled.
Well, just
seals.
so, I mean, looking at that, so we know we're going to have bays. How many bays are we talking about?
4 on the fire side and 3 on the public works side.
So
7 days.
is that like a straight line, 7 bays long,
With a lobby that.
with a
Lobby
lobby
and the
sandwiched in the middle? I just say that from a point, because obviously when you're looking at this type of thing, I'm trying to picture one that's 7 bays long with something in the middle as opposed to just 4 bays.
Could they have a little tower?
Probably their training tower.
A mini
Some of
one.
the conceptuals that they showed us is the nice walkway, and then, so it gives you that separation, fire and public works.
And
The
I'm
flagpole.
I'm going to
and then
assume
going
that
into the
this is going to be
lobbies.
drive-through bays, open in the rear,
Yes.
all the way through the front,
So
right?
we're working with them,
I'm-
publics, too.
right, I remember we
as
were
far as
talking about
access,
that.
Yeah.
Oh, another thought that came to mind, thinking of storms. If you had your druthers on which way to point the bays, north-south would be better than east-west, correct, since they're drive-through, just as far as where you're going to expect to get max wind?
And that works with the way the site is. It also works with solar orientation
Yeah,
as well.
okay.
So there's several reasons to have basically the front of the building facing south, being.
Yeah, just from an access point for the fire department, they would have to have that.
Just everything's aligning as far as that goes. And I would suggest white or something very close to white is the color you want. You want to reject as much heat as you can. So, you know, like we have, a red brick facade on our fire station.
And I think most all those pictures anymore that I've seen,
White.
they're all white, light gray with
Yeah,
white trim.
okay.
The roofs, as you said, a lot of the ones you see are silver, white roofs. And I say that from the look, even from the beach side pictures that I looked at, the newer ones, were all the same type, going the same direction.
Now-
That-
Yeah, that is a question. When you say roof, are you thinking metal roof, concrete roof, or have you gotten to that point yet where you figure what,
I think if we're planning for a future photovoltaic system, metal roofs have a very adaptable
yeah, the ridges, yeah.
for photovoltaics.
Now, what about metal roofs 1,000 feet from the ocean? Because we've had some issues like at Pelican Beach Park with having to redo, within 10 years, Alan?
Yeah, so they make a galvalume, which is really steel, and with a galvanneal coating on it. We don't want to do that. We would want to do a complete aluminum standing seam work.
How will that, the reason I'm asking is that we have the old aluminum Miami awning windows in our house. and we've had a corrosion problem, including on the inside. Or actually, you know, you get the white oxide forming on the, now that was just milled aluminum, so these would be what,
They have a baked enamel on the aluminum, so they go through, like it's called a Kynar finish, and it's
what's the,
several coatings of
okay, and the manufacturer warrants them for how long?
something like 30 years.
We have about 20-year roof life here. If it says 30 years, it's
Yeah.
10, not 10 years after that, and that's what we have here.
But that roofing system is assembled with clips, so you're not drilling through the aluminum. The clips are going over the top of the aluminum.
Yes, there's a clip that goes over the top of the aluminum, and then the aluminum, the next panel gets seamed to that with, it's like either a double lock or a triple lock, where there's a seamer that goes down the roof that locks the.
And those are the ridges where they have clamps, they just go up to hold the rails.
And those are rated for 165?
Now, I guess that would be a thing then, if obviously the city wants this building to last longer than 20 or 30 years, so the design should facilitate removal and replacement when that time comes.
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to put the cost of the solar in this contract. I just
No,
want to be
but if it's
honest.
solar ready,
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
solar ready.
yeah.
Is there any asymmetry opportunities where if the goal is to build or design a building that's going to be, you know, bulletproof in a sense, are there rules in the design where perhaps the north and the east walls are more armored than the west and the south, so that if we were going to put these beautiful windows in, we can put them more on the south and west side?
So the code doesn't distinguish between which elevation you are hardening the most.
Right.
But certainly with the way this building is sited, that does make a lot of sense, that the east side of the building would be
More
somewhat
solid wall.
fortified.
Right.
A lot of times the north side of the building is often the side that ends up with a lot more glazing because of the daylight not being direct daylight on that side. But I think we'll have to be very selective about, and you know, as we get the floor plan layout, and we'll just be selective, because one of the goals will be to provide as much daylighting to the living spaces as possible.
Is that so the code's the minimum we have to meet, so we want to do better than that if we can. Is it true within, and I'm asking this as a question, within your architectural design work that in this environment, armoring certain walls is more productive than non-armoring other walls? I guess what I'm trying to come up with, instead of a box, and the windows are beautiful, but we know that isn't really a hardened building, that we might have some flexibility in where we can put that aesthetics.
And I think I think you're bringing up a good consideration for as we lay out that floor plan, that maybe at the east wall of the building, that's where there's a mechanical room or some, you know, or some custodial type of space that doesn't really need daylight. And so as we start to lay out that floor plan, it's definitely something that we need to think about. And
That's a really good idea
makes sense.
to do that. It's a good idea.
So as far
Oh, we
as,
have them.
so as far as what we're trying to get at is, what do we want it to look like so that they can go forward from that? I think, given some of the stuff we looked at, I think obviously we didn't want one that was just full of solid glass, a square building with lots of glass. I think aesthetic from Satellite Beach point of view, that's probably not something that most people would choose. I would go with that. as I did, I tried to go and look for what has already been built with a beachside type theme to it, as opposed to, a cottage or solid straight brick or something to that effect. And saying that, like I said, as some of the pictures I've showed you, obviously that's possible, that you can still have a beach look.
With little windows.
Look to it. I mean, obviously, as they know, the windows and stuff, obviously they can work around. But I mean, this as opposed to, a plain square. I mean, this has some look to it, gives it more of a beach theme as opposed to a square box.
Is the glass in the garage, like, what does that do to cost? And what does that do
Well, certainly,
for them? Is that something,
a sectional door that has glass in it versus one that's just metal panels is going to be significantly more expensive. I don't have numbers on that, and,
I don't have numbers offhand, but we're looking at the impact resistance on the glass. The more panels that you add, the more that you're going to be spending money.
Yeah.
Past projects I've been on, I've seen it get deleted down to a minimum number of panels that the fire department decided was useful for visibility. That's pretty much
in the garages?
the garages.
Do you all have panels in your garage now?
We do, there's
Small.
Okay.
Very small.
probably this big.
So smaller, 4 per door? Okay.
Can you avoid any glazing
Can you come up
on
to
the
the mic?
doors
John?
if you actually do like clear story,
The mic, one of you? Yeah.
fix clear story
She
windows
can't take
above the
minutes
door?
if you're sitting back there. She doesn't know what you're saying. And then, I still want to call her Councilwoman Gott. Lorraine, committee member Gott, is going to want to listen to this meeting later, and she can't hear it if nobody's on the mic. So I just want to make people cognizant of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would agree. I just know in my line of work that the glass that we have to use ends up being 4 times the cost of normal glass, because unless you're going to go out and put shutters up over every window in a fire station, which is not practical, right? You still got to be able to roll under the worst conditions that are out there, so you're going to have to use impact-type glass that goes out there. I understand the need for natural light, and I would probably go back to even when you talk about that, even that, the windows and the doors are to a minimum, you know what I mean? It's not like the whole door is glass. They keep it enough to get light in there, but yet,
Would that be sufficient for the fire department, that type of?
Something like that would be great. We've actually had some meetings with some of the other beachside fire stations, just recently, like last week, that, we really wanted to meet with, some of the city staff to talk about what we've learned. A few windows would be nice, just to have some natural light, but the giant glass bay doors, we don't really have any preference. And I know that we're going to be behind the dentist office anyway, so it's not really going to be a huge visual thing from the curb. We also learned about bay doors is not to have red bay doors.
I'm sorry, not that what?
Red bay doors.
Red? Okay.
Red, because we talked to Cape Canaveral, they ended up getting red bay doors, and then being on the beach, they turned pink. And then,
But that's for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You all are very important for that. And
so then they have to wax their bay doors once a month. So, just to keep them red.
trucks are enough, you don't want to do the garage doors?
So we're saying, maybe white bay doors would be good, and, we like that beach look, looks good. We like that. But we have a lot of things that we've learned going to talk to them.
If you were thinking of an architectural style, I'm not sure what you call it, the small Florida houses, basically, they've got a roof that's pitched, and then the porch is a little bit off, whatever you call that style. Now, obviously, that doesn't work here, but I did notice, like on this one picture, you kind of begin to see it. You've got two levels of roof there, and so, if there was something that hinted at that might, although that's not a style that's been used in the city hasn't, I don't know what you call a style. but,
Actually, the city tried to gear most of the new development to vernacular. That didn't work too well, but it did, yeah.
yeah. And as far as colors, I guess this is in the redevelopment district, right? Is that color scheme still apply?
I think it would apply to us. I think anything, if you're looking at the colors of the gray and the white and the coastal colors, that would completely fit in with what the city's color scheme is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I've noticed like on Oceana, the blue stands that, to me, it looks kind of nice. It's a contrast that it's not, it's not an in-your-face blue, but it's
I think we'll get the colors though, once they figure out.
yeah,
what the
once they
design is
figure
gonna be.
everything else.
Once
but-
we get to the design, and I agree with that, because that was another look that has that. The colors part's all right, but it's a second story to it. You could, even if you just stretch that all the way down the length of it, but again, it gives it more of a beachy look to it. I mean, I don't know,
Is everyone in favor of that look?
Anybody else got any other
vernacular?
comments as far as what the general look would look like, or what your thoughts are from the beach
I
side?
think the beach side is obviously very appealing. Right? It's nice to be unique, to a point. My concern is just reducing the robustness of the building strength itself, and just make sure that we're building this to be hardened. I like the word instead of bulletproof. Different group of people. So we don't want to take any risks in reducing that ability to make it hardened. I think one of our strings that we were pulling on is, and part of our charters, is what that material is going to look like. Whether we go up with a stand-up concrete that's already been pressed to have some features to it that simply need to be coated with something that would not require that much maintenance. The type of material is, I think, kind of what we would like to go for. To answer your question directly, that beach style, that uniqueness of it is a very nice feature, as long as it doesn't drive our maintenance and reducing the armament of it.
I would tend to believe these days, I mean, as you can see from today when they build pools, for example, you can choose just about any type of design, corner, curve, feature that you want into it. I mean, obviously, concrete stuff these days is very moldable into just about anything.
Yeah.
That you should be able to take pretty much any design and make it as hardened as possible. I would say from the point, you're right, when you look at some of the beach things, you look at me and I look at it and say, that kind of looks like a stick house over there, and I don't want it to blow away from a hurricane. But at the same side as, when you go by houses that are being built on Cocoa Beach now, they are all solid wall construction, and they have lots of pitches and stuff to it, but they are what we call hurricane houses, right? They're
Right.
hardened that way and still get to have the look to it.
Steve, would you agree that this looks more substantial than this? You get the feeling it's...
Probably.
Yeah, that was just the thought I'd had. When I look at these two pictures, okay, the upper one, just for some reason, feels like it's more substantial. I'm not sure what, it has more to do with the shape, I think, than the windows and stuff like that. But I think that's one thing
Alan, don't go anywhere.
people might kind of appreciate, they want to build. I think it would make the community feel better if when they looked at the building, they said, that thing's going to be there.
I think from what you're saying, when you look at that bottom one that you showed there too, I think it's a good cross. It looks hardened. It looks pretty substantial.
It looks like they're taking advantage of a particular side that doesn't need to be as hardened as the other side.
Right. So, I mean, I think it kind of gives you that idea. I think my idea is, can we take that and kind of swing it a little bit more into a beachy thing? So this, to me, is just more of a rectangular type look to it, with this kind of adds curves, whatever you want to say to it, but gives it that
Right.
same feel to it.
So it sounds like there's been a couple of school trips, in a sense, going to look at other facilities. And I think in this forum, it'd be great for you just to rattle off the good and the bad and stuff you like and you didn't like, but you're going to miss some things unless you wrote it down. I mean, certainly rattle it off, but I think if you took the time and got together and everybody wrote down what they liked and didn't like and can give that to us.
We'll get a good list.
Yeah.
I'll work on that tomorrow and send that
Okay.
over to you guys.
But do it. It doesn't need to be tomorrow. It's just, and because we're going to figure out what our meeting schedule is going to be. But if we can have, work on that list, and it can be a list that can mature over time too.
Okay.
But you're the tenants of the building. And all the work.
And Public Works.
Yes, I'm looking at Alan now, he's back, and I want to hear from them too. I mean, we're trying to concentrate on all those four things, but we need to hear from Public Works side too on what your needs are going to be as far as access and sustainability, architectural design, and lagoon-friendly landscaping, which is our
I
fourth
would
thing.
say, I would add to that is, number one, you're living in the house. It is your house, you're living in the house, so I find it important to know what you like about your house and what your house is gonna have in it. I think at this point, Alan would just be happy for something that didn't have a leaky roof and didn't flood, and the doors and windows actually worked, would be
They
a
want a
serious
functional
improvement.
bathroom that,
That too,
That's right.
like I said, I'm.
Isn't he stretching a little bit there?
I mean, I think compared to what he's living in now,
they're never happy, John,
But there's one thing we haven't mentioned, maybe we've alluded to it. I would think Public Works would really appreciate it if there was nothing they had to do when the storm came to their home and the fire department home. No putting up shutters, no this or that. They take care of the other stuff. The building just
I think
does
that
its thing.
we were looking at impact windows, but
Right.
is that, do we shutter it anyway? With impact windows? No? Okay.
So Cocoa Beach, City of Cocoa Beach also uses their fire station as their EOC, and they were recommending doing the tilt wall for the construction, and they have the hurricane impact windows. They have some of the things that they've missed in their building design. One of their main things was the generator. The generator was put on the first floor, and they're in floodplain, so they would need to elevate their generator. Some things
That's why
like
we're
that.
moving ours out of the floodplain.
But yes, they were saying construction-wise, the tilt wall, I know that our main concerns are the functionality of the building. I think that, the beachy theme is very pretty and everything, but, even though it's our home, we just want it to function the way that we'd like it to function.
To answer John's question, we don't have any buildings right now that have impact windows, so every building that we have has to be shuttered. If we're gonna have a two-story building, I absolutely don't wanna have to shutter.
Yeah.
So unless we get automatic shutters that hit a button, they roll down, roll back up.
Until they don't.
Until they don't, well, maintenance is always gonna be an issue, so, so you're gonna have to deal with maintenance at one point or another. Even like you were going back to the aluminum roof. Aluminum roofs, in the warranty, require you to wash the roof down once a year just to get the salt spray off. If you're within a certain distance of the beach, part of that warranty is to wash down your metal roof. So, there's gonna be maintenance to anything, but if I would suggest strongly to use impact windows, and those that can be shuttered, it should, because impact doesn't break and shatter, but it does crack. So, if something hits it hard enough, it's gonna crack.
Maybe that extra hardening could happen on the east side.
And I think that's a good point, Mike, I think you're right. What's happening on the east side is probably, and I would go along with what you said, that's probably a good place to have equipment rooms or non-occupied spaces, so that you can harden that side without having the windows. You don't need the natural light. That can take the brunt of whatever. And obviously, whatever's on the west side or the other sides, you could go in a different direction from that point. And I'm just agreeing with John just said is, we need to we know you have to go around and take care of every other building in the city. We don't need you to do one more building.
Yeah.
Right,
As
no,
it is.
and I understand what you're saying, I appreciate that, because, during a storm, we do have enough to do without having to put shutters on new buildings, if they have impact glass. The other thing to consider, everybody's talking about the east, and, the east, it's good to harden the east, but tropical storms and hurricanes don't just come out of the east, one, and two, they predominantly do, yes, but they rotate. So, the wind,
the backside.
you're gonna have wind coming north and south, more than you're gonna have it coming out of the east. So, and then I'm just thinking of storms. Predominantly, we have nor'easters and things like that, where we have strong storms that do come out of the east. But if your consideration is tropical storms and hurricanes, those winds move around. So, just hardening the east is gonna help, but it's not gonna solve the problem.
As far as access management goes, the list that hopefully the fire department, both tenants actually put together, but they have a triage room downstairs in their lobby. And that will be part of our access management is people by nature are just going to roll up to the building saying, help me. So we're going to need that identified on your list.
Yeah, and they'll have, hopefully at the next meeting, you'll have a concept plan of the layout, which, when they met with the departments, they started putting that together. We're still finalizing stormwater issues, and that's why you can't see it right now, because we don't know whether we're putting it on near or far away from the site yet. So hopefully we'll have that settled by the end of this, in the next couple of weeks, and be able to show you what that layout will look like.
Now, how long, I can understand a generator probably's got, 3 days worth of fuel or something, whatever it is. What about water? We've had a problem out here. We've lost a couple of houses because of water problems and things during the storm, because they aren't the towers anymore. They're pumps, and when the pumps stop, the water pressure stops. So I don't know how much water staff needs during an event.
You're talking about running out of firefighting water? Is that what you're talking
Not
about?
firefighting, no. I'm talking about living water in a building, drinking water. In other words, if you turn the tap and nothing comes out, if you go to take a shower, nothing comes out, presumably there's got to be
And
some
we
kind
would
of backup.
probably take care of that as a part of our storm prep, because I don't know if we would design a building around that, largely because you have Melbourne and Cocoa right now getting ready to construct another line along Pineda as a stopgap for connections. So I think a lot of our problems in that regard are going to go away with that project. But that I would just prepare for that like we always do. Like last year, or with Irma, we had flats of water that we sent to Cocoa Beach because we didn't need it, because we had water here, but they didn't. So we always prepare that way, and we'll do that in every, yeah.
That's not pump based, the water tower is right there, that's not a pump based system.
The water tower is not in operation anymore.
It's not in operation?
No.
But that line is, going to solve a lot of those issues.
Now, I guess another question is, each time there's a storm coming, Public Works takes a whole bunch of file cabinets and stuff over on the mainland, correct? Or for-
We did that for '04, we did some for the last hurricane, but that's about it.
Okay, so
We've digitized most of our records at this point.
pardon me?
We've digitized most of our records.
Okay, so that's not an issue. Okay, I was just saying if that was an issue, then you might want a little extra storage space or something.
Kind of pulling on the aesthetics for a minute, do you think having the ability to come up with a water storage tank on site would be something that we would consider for sustainability?
If we were to use it for reuse, for, like flushing toilets or something like that, that might be something they could look at.
Have you done that? Has other people done that in the past? A couple hundred gallons in storage?
We recently did the Space Coast Health Foundation, which is in Rockledge. It used to be a bowling alley. That building has a large flat roof, and we put two 10,000-gallon tanks facing US 1 on that building. And it's for irrigation, so it's to offset the irrigation. But so the irrigation on that, now that it's established, it really doesn't need that much water. We found that when you want to use it for a gray water system, there's a lot of treatment that has to be done. I'd want to review that with our plumbing engineer to see how you know, how we can do that and not interrupt service, obviously, to the toilets and so forth.
Is that part of the sustainability role, is to have on-site backup water?
Well, it might push the cost where it can't go, but the thing is, it's like solar. You could set it up so that it was an add-on without doing a whole lot of other stuff, if you think about it.
So one question, when we're talking about solar, just for that thought. I know here we get the solar and it just goes system because we don't actually have a battery system that's storing that power. Is that going to be a consideration for the fire department later when they put solar on it? Are we ever going to have a space for a battery, or are we just going to?
We can plan for it like we did with this building for the possible add-on of that, but there's a law right now that prevents us from connecting to the grid or disconnecting from the grid at all. And that has a lot to do with safety of the workers during an outage, because if you connect and that electricity goes back to the grid and they're trying to put something on and they think it's off, it can affect, it can hurt them. So that's part of the reasoning behind that current law. I think there's other reasons behind that too, but we'll go into that later. But they, but that's the reason. And so we can be prepared for the day that might come, but right now we would not be able to separate from the grid.
Yeah, I think that's prudent, things like solar, batteries, water, make them so they're not that hard to add on when the time comes.
Some of those things you can get grants for too, especially if you're doing emergency operations center generators. There's grant money that you can go after. So I hear what you're saying, get it in the design while we're in design, and then as we are able to get those grants and fund it.
Yeah, and I think you'll see us have to do that with some of these aspects, because I think we have a commitment to solar, and we're going to, be prepared to put that on. But within the first, round of construction, the commitment has to be, for the building.
And I get that. I just, like I said, I know, because we've had to do this where I work, we had to turn around and retrofit buildings so that we could bring up a portable generator and hook it up to the building. So basically, I had to tear half a building down and rebuild the building just so I could plug a generator into it, where you really want to, if you're going to build the building, you want to build it so at least it already has that part there. You may not use it. We may be 10 years before we use it. But we don't get to the point and say, well, we're going to have to tear this corner of the fire station off so we can bring on our solar system or generating system, because we didn't think about that at that point. And you're right. I think going forward, you're right. But you just want to be able to do that.
And just to be clear, they are planning on a generator, because that's something we have to have, no matter what. So that'll be done with this project.
Aren't they also going to raise their fuel tanks?
I think we're going to raise them, right? Or are you moving them to the site? We're still settling on that, I think.
I think we're at least moving the diesel to this site, right, Alan?
Yeah, because,
Alan, can you get on the mic?
Join us.
You can sit next to me if you want.
yeah, we're gonna need diesel, for the generator. And right now, the diesel tank is located at the fire department, which also, fuels the generator there. So it would make sense to move, because you have fire trucks that need diesel, so it would make sense to move the diesel tank to the fire station. And depending upon what we're going to do with the lot that the Public Works building is now sitting on, and also depending upon the condition of the underground tank now, We may have to remove that tank because of age before we have a problem. So if that's the case, then what would be also prudent is to move that tank to an above-ground system up at the new building so that, you know, we can fuel public works vehicles, and when the police need fuel, they just come by there. I mean, it's not a big deal. But that way we can monitor it and make sure that, you know, it's not getting broken into and people having free for all for gas. So, plus we also need non-ethanol fuel for our mowing equipment and things like that. So we'll probably locate all the fuel up there.
So you need a mini fuel farm then?
Basically. But I would like to make sure that everything's going to be above ground. We're not going to put anything underground anymore. It doesn't make any sense, you know, to go underground with something that you know is eventually going to leak, especially in the soil conditions that we have.
Now, I guess the question is, if you've got that fuel storage and it's above ground, obviously it has to be protected from the wind and debris. Do you make a separate structure? You don't put it in the structure, correct?
So we're anticipating having a walled yard that has some of the materials that you use for landscaping in their separate bins, the fuel tanks, the waste oil, used oil, yeah.
Well, kind of getting on access management, and don't go anywhere else. When I heard the fire department and public works was going to kind of bundle their resources and get one place, I know with two drastically different functions. As far as access management goes, you know, in my mind, we're trying to figure out how we can maybe separate the emergency calls from the getting it done, you know, during the day type chores that your team does. Do we need to, for access management, do we need to kind of separate to some degree the emergency vehicles from the slow-moving lawnmowers and tractors and things? Have you guys thought about how you're going to cohabitate in a parking lot?
You cohabitate right out of school, so.
Okay.
I think that's part of what you said, is that we were talking about one end of the building was basically firehouse, bays, fire station, more of a lobby type thing in the middle, and then the other side of the building was going to be basically public works in that area.
I'm not worried about people running into each other in a hallway. I'm worried about them in the parking
Well, I'm
lot.
talking about vehicles coming and going in and out the bays. They're not like they're crossing over in front of each other. They're not side by side where they're coming out, but they're supposed to be at opposite ends of them.
I don't know that. That's why I was...
So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, Bowman Consulting has prepared a site plan that shows how that separation happens, and they're both drive-through bays, but on the, there's basically entry point to the site that is at one end of the site. You drive around and you can get back into all 7 of the bays, but as you're exiting, there's a large apron out front that is dedicated to the fire rescue operations. So nothing else will pull in through that, onto that apron. That's an out-only area. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's right, and right now we're in the conceptual phase, but there's also going to be some type of access from the rear of the building, and the city's kind of working back and forth with the school board and Publix. So again, that's why we didn't show a site plan, because we're not sure of where that's going to be yet. But the idea is to have entry from the rear, 2 ways to get out from the front, and then we also do truck turning templates and things like that. And a little further on down the process, it'll be available for you all to look at.
Is there any consideration or need to consider a traffic control signal? Because when school's letting out or something, traffic can get interesting on Jackson, and it'd certainly be a shame if we were blocking up fire department trying to get to a call.
So we know that's one of our been one of our concerns also. Like, we have trouble getting out of our station right now just from where the light is when people pull up. So we would like to have something like that. I know another concerns with access is, let's say that, the back truck is out of service and some reason it's pulled sideways across the backs of the bays. Are we going to be able to still back our engines into our bays? Or, I don't know, there's also going to be 2 ways to get out.
Yeah.
I said we're probably going to have to cross the public works side to get out both ways.
You shouldn't have to, no.
Okay.
Yeah. You could, as one access, but there's 2 others.
So if one is blocked, we'll still be able to get out the other one?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that, as far as the light goes, that's something the fire department wants, and we can kind of look into it with the city and see what's feasible.
A light where?
I mean, I don't think it would
Something
be,
just
yeah, I mean,
alert people.
yeah, I think it would be more almost like a pedestrian crossing type signal, but for the fire department.
Yeah, I've seen in different communities where you've got a fire department, they'll have their
Almost
yellow
like
lights
those
or
things
whatever.
that DOT installed all up and down the road, except for the fire department.
But they have that up in
Have to be
the city of
cognizant
Cape
that
Canaveral
there's-
is like that, where they need to come out and pull onto A1A, they have lights at that street. The only time they're ever in use is when the fire department gets exiting out of the fire station, they hit the lights stop all the traffic so you can come
But I
in
don't
and
know,
out.
like, I think that it would be to do something major like that would be pretty cost prohibitive, I think.
I think that probably goes more to,
They
when you
probably
do the
have control
complete
over that light
streets.
too. We don't. That's a DOT light.
Right.
The
So
complete street's gonna do the sidewalk and the bike lanes and, so it
but I
would
mean,
eliminate that.
when you redo Jackson, I mean, that's where the thought needs to, I understand the point there, and I'll get that from the same point, just coming to this meeting today, that when all the cars lined up waiting to get in and out of the school, even if you're not going to the school, the whole road is blocked. You are now stopped for 10 or 15 minutes. And I understand what you're saying about the fire station. Those people stop at that light, but they're lined up all the way past Ireland's office. So when that light's red, it doesn't really help the fire department to get out of the fire station because everybody's already sitting in front of the fire station. So I think the point being made is, if the fire truck needs to come out and come on to Jackson, we got to make sure that the traffic going all the way down to Delora and stuff is not at a standstill in front of the fire station.
I have to say that I pick up my kids there every day at 2:30, and that's when the most cars are there because it's elementary school. And I have never been backed up past this site, ever. In fact, it's backed up to South Patrick.
I just know that.
gets out, it's backed up all the way to Walgreens sometimes.
Our job is we plan for the worst possible thing to happen all the time.
And I would agree with that.
And we just want, if that access place is blocked and there's something, an emergency happening, we would feel terrible if we can't get to our call because there's a car in the way. Or if that car, it's all lined up, those cars can't get out, it'll get congested. When we just drive the fire truck down the street, people lose their minds and they don't know how to drive anymore. So they might just pull right in our way. And we don't want to cause an accident while we're just trying to go to help somebody else.
And I agree with that. I've been stuck just trying to come out of the Walgreens parking lot on a Jackson, and I got stuck at traffic.
So we agree that the problem exists. For planning purposes, is there anything we can do to mitigate it?
It just should be a consideration maybe for when pulling out of that lot.
It's possible you could stripe out the road,
I was just thinking the same
do
thing.
not block intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A black intersection.
Just a consideration, I think is what we're talking about.
Because once they can get on the road, if they had to, just like here, coming here, when I hit time, traffic was backed up from there, all the cars waiting to turn in to pick up the kids, all the way up to, actually going this way, both ways on the street. So I wound up going in the wrong lane all the way in front of the school until I could duck in and get around in front of them. You guys obviously can legally do that if you need to, so it's a matter of getting onto the main street, and that was my concern, that if you get blocked.
Our trucks are wide too, and we need some space to swing out, so even if people are pulling off to the sides of the road, we still need to be able to fit through.
Yeah, so,
All right, so I'm going to
I got a request for Public Works, and it's just a yes or no type stuff. We've asked the fire department to kind of give this list, things we can go by to make sure we can help them. And the same thing with Public Works. It can be an active list. Just let us know those things on these 4 agenda items, those things that we should take into account, that you as the tenant in that building need, so that we're listening to you also.
Yeah, you know, and we did the roundtable the last time, and it was difficult for me, because I'm a visual person. I work with plans all the time, and, you know, if I don't have a set of plans in front of me, it's hard for me to visualize what we're doing and what we need, what our needs are. And I also like to get my folks involved in it too, because those are the folks that are going to have to work in those spaces. So I want to make sure that they are comfortable with the size of the area and things like that. So as we're going through those exercises, I will also go through the 4 things that you're talking about and get their suggestions as well. I don't want to, you know, this is not my building, it's their building. I just sit in an office and, or drive around, but those guys have to work in it. So I want them to be comfortable. And so we all get together and talk about it, and I'll get their ideas and maybe some ideas from some other places and bring it back to you. But I have a question for Greg. How soon do you think we'll get some, like 20% plans or something, 30%, just so that we can look at the...
Yeah, so now that we have a feel for what the second floor structure, the second floor roof is going to be like, I feel confident in moving forward with the concept plan. If the building was going to have 2, you know, equal floor plates that had a flat roof on it, that was a very modern building, doesn't sound like we're going in that direction. Mm-hmm. So today's meeting was very helpful in knowing that I need to inset some of that second floor a little bit, and then, you know, work with the slope of the roof and ceiling heights and spaces and so forth. So we're ready to move forward with that concept design. So it'll be a couple weeks before we get that.
That's great. Yeah, you know, as soon as we can get some feedback to everybody, you know.
So that's where I was going to go with it. So the first thing I was going to say, so by consensus, I think we all agree what we're looking for is a beach type design. Something that's our middle name, right.
It's a new architectural standard, like
yes.
a new...
So, I mean, from an architectural point, that's what we're saying. We want a...
Industrial
They
beach
keep
design.
that type in architectural, right?
Right, some type of a beachfront.
Armored beach.
That's the look, which is what we're trying to get at. That's the look we're going for. What I would say is, by the next time we meet, a few things that would be nice to have from them is maybe some concepts. These are some thoughts, and as soon as you can put together, let's just say you put together 5 ideas. If you can do that in a week, we can have a meeting immediately thereafter. I mean, and I'm talking about, I don't want the whole...
Yeah, they're not going to do that. They're going to put
Okay,
together
well, I mean,
like the idea.
All right, well, I'm trying to get, because here's my point is, you come back and bring me one, and we all sit there and look at it and says, that's not beach, and that's not what we're looking for. I don't want to set this back.
But
I don't care if
that's
he gives
why
me
he
that.
gave you those, you know, to get that general idea.
Well, that's
from
what I
you.
said.
And think that's
I'm not asking for what Alan's asking for either. I don't need blueprints. What I'm really trying to get is, I don't care if you draw them on a napkin, but can you just give me, you know, here's what we're thinking.
Yeah, so the software we use nowadays, you're basically building the building virtually in the computer. So it's a 3D building. We can look at it from a bunch of different angles. And so the first thing we'll do is, after we've kind of laid out the spaces, is design the massing of the building, right? And so what I'd like to come back with is those 2 things, right? So the massing of the building, and we may not knock it out of the park with the committee, right, but I feel confident that we'll get pretty close to where we're not having.
I'm good with that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So.
With your software tools, is it practical in a sense that we're trying to get a feel for what this can look like, that you can give us a couple of options? Can you
Yes.
pull a wall here, move a window here, and this would be a different option?
Yeah, as we design and we get to a fork in the road,
Yeah.
we might just do that, yeah.
Because like I said, with that, and then the other part, obviously, and to keep this moving along, so we talked about, we want a beach look to it. The other part is obviously, since we're talking about landscaping, have that with it. Here's the look, here's the type of landscaping we're thinking about, a conceptual idea. I mean, obviously, I don't want a list of flowers. I'm just talking about in mind, because that's what we're talking about. Landscaping, sustainability, maybe that list or concept of here's what we're going to put in sustainability-wise, to
That
go
might
through
be-
there.
That might be best for the third or fourth meeting.
Yeah.
but-
Well, and again, I think what I'm trying to do is just say, here's the general idea. Everybody says, yep, that's it, or no, this is just totally off, before you get too much time and everything invested in it. I don't want to waste anybody's time in doing this.
I think the landscaping is largely driven by the site design and whether they can even put a tree here or put a tree there. So that's why he's saying it'll be better, not maybe this next meeting, but after that, because that way they'll have a better idea of what they can put in landscaping wise. So at that point, that might be a better time.
Yeah, I think the landscaping, I mean, I don't want to say it's not going to be all that exciting, but, it is going to be
Native plants.
Well, I think my more look is, here's concrete,
Yeah.
here's sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, you'll be able to see that.
Here's landscape, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying, I'm not trying to get into the details of it, but, I mean, I look at the plan we just showed now, I see a lot, right? Now you take a lot and you put a square building on the lot. Can we see a little bit more? I mean,
Yeah,
even,
but I think what we would do is we would, like you said, we would provide, whenever he's ready, we'll
Right.
sort of be ready with the site.
I mean, even
plan.
these do that, right? These pictures here are showing, here's some grass, here's some trees, here's some curbs, here's where the sidewalks.
Those are real pictures though, but
Yeah.
what he'll do is give you a site plan,
Right.
like a
Right.
concept plan, and you'll see where the landscaping areas are.
Exactly.
And by then, we'll be ready to start talking
Right.
about
Like I
it.
said, I don't think that's even gonna be our purview. I'm not picking out trees.
But they want to see a final,
Yeah, we'll probably do the site
discussion,
plan,
yeah.
and then after you guys would look at that, and then probably after that, you would see some
the
landscape.
final touches. Because I think, if you move things around, then they're going to have to redo all that, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
So for the next meeting, what will be the,
So the
What are
next
the items
meeting,
we wanna talk
you'll
about?
have a good, like what Greg just said about the massing, you'll have an image of that, and so what the building would be, a 3D image of the building. And then you'll have a concept plan of the site. And then we'll be able to go from there. And I think at that point, so we got our marching orders really, because we're writing down everything you're talking about. And so, I heard, we really want to pay attention to the hardening of the building. We want to make sure that we're sustainable and we have natural light, but we don't want the building hardening to, take second to that. We want to make sure that we do pay attention to access, especially if Delora backs up to, past the site, that we figure out something to deal with that. You want the beachside vernacular. We look at, areas that could be hardened more than others, especially if they're affected by the storms more, wanting to include future sections of the building to make sure that we can add things sustainability-wise later without having to reconstruct the building. Those are some of the things that's what I heard today. So I don't know if, I'm sure staff has theirs that they've been hearing. And then the Public Works and Fire Department will bring back, their suggestions in those categories as well to you to make sure that you have what they are asking for as well.
Courtney, on the, again, I'm going back to people being there during a storm. Presumably, the design would also, since it's a fairly large building, allow that there be, I guess, what I'd call an internal refugia. In other words, someplace with no windows or anything, it's interior. In Alabama, where our daughter lives with her family, every house they build has a tornado. You know, theirs is just in the garage, it's just a concrete box, you know.
We have a panic office here in this building, and it's my office. That's what the panic building is here.
Yeah, panic room, if you want to call it that, yeah. In
It's
other
usually
words,
where Alan panics and Dave panics.
And also, Courtney, question for you. When and how will we get, I mean, we've got 5 people here, but there's 10,000 residents. How are we going to bleed this in without coming up, you know, that they come to the council meeting and everybody's hair's on fire because it didn't match what they wanted? In other words, how do we,
There's not a lot you can do about that, and I don't really foresee that happening.
well, are you,
I mean, it's
Would it-
posted on
would
the
it-
website, the meetings we're having. and
Yeah, they're
it's-
public meetings.
So
okay.
they are posted on there.
Okay, and I don't know whether it would,
It's on the calendar.
if that's, okay, if that's being done, if there's anything you could do on Facebook or something, you know, that just, you know, but I think I could see that it could disrupt the meeting if you've got 100 people in here and everybody's got their own ideas. So there's kind of a balancing act, but,
That's honestly why we do committees like this, and we keep a lot of the design, interior design of the buildings in the purview of the staff because of that reason right there.
Right.
Because there's no way you can finish on time. I mean, we
Yeah.
can plan this for years if we do that, if we do this in the public eye that much. So that's why we do a committee like this, so we have a recommendation to council, and that's what's done, you know, and we'll update council as we move forward, you know, so if we get to a 60% and you all sign off on the exterior design, then we you know, we'll take that to council, make sure they're okay, and, you know, and keep them apprised that way.
okay,
But-
so it isn't a final goes to council, here it is.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
we
so-
would never do that.
Okay, if you're incrementing it, then
Yeah.
that should help.
Yeah.
And I think just try to
Because
make sure we're staying on track with what this committee is.
And we are on a
Absolutely.
timeline with Public Works. I'm getting very concerned about the condition of their working space at this point, from a workers' comp standpoint.
So Steve, we just looked at calendars, and I, you know, for what we're talking about, getting things ready to you all for review. What is, September 19th, Thursday, 3 o'clock? That's about 3 weeks out. Gives them time to get information together, Public Works and Fire to get their information.
Could I ask for the 17th? I just say that because Tuesday's better than Thursdays.
13th, I will not be here, just
And
let
the
you know.
weddings are, I'm going to be in a wedding.
What about the next Tuesday?
Oh, the 17th?
17th. It's just same week, it's just Tuesday instead of Thursday.
It'd work
I
with
won't
me.
be here, but if Courtney's here,
I can run it if you want me to.
of course you can.
I mean, let me just go back, I mean, so today's Tuesday at 3 o'clock is in general for the board Tuesdays.
How are you guys? Like, we're not even looking at them.
September
No, I
17th.
checked with,
Oh, okay.
that's why I threw it out there.
Oh, okay, good,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, I can do either.
The
Tuesday.
17th?
I can do 17th or 19th.
So
I can do the 17th.
17th we can do? Okay.
You guys,
So far, looks pretty good.
all right.
You like this time? I like this time.
This
Three
fine.
o'clock?
3's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just say that because on Thursdays, I have meetings that run till at least 2 o'clock.
yeah. No,
That would,
we gotta make sure you guys can be here.
Tuesdays work
We're
better.
gonna Diane's house.
She's like secretly going,
Yeah. You're going to call in, aren't you?
I just want to follow something John said about the social activities at the fire department. I'm hoping that what you're saying with Atlantic Plaza, so that kind of parking doesn't have to be done on your lot. You can park there and come over.
Let's say think with the school.
Or the school,
Because
yeah.
Especially when schools.
Yeah, my point is there's other parking there. It doesn't have to be on this lot to
I mean,
cover
so
those
the
big
school uses it
events,
for
and
community
still have it.
football games. I'm thinking
That's
the
true.
rest of them.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of the parking. I was thinking of the event itself, like when you come over at Christmas, you know, their whole parking lot's filled with activities and the lawn,
But you
so,
have to have parking for the people who are coming, I think is what.
yeah,
you're saying, right?
yeah.
So, oh, definitely.
we are in contact with Publix. They were excited that we own that property because they are currently building out the old movie theater for a new movie theater coming in. and they're actually taking up the space behind MTV and making more theaters back there. And they're renovating that little corner to make it real brighter and with landscaping and pretty stuff, make it nicer. And they wanted to get a pub in one of those units that had access to the back to have a beer garden type use.
Coasters.
Yeah, like coasters. And because we were there, we could put a pedestrian access to Jackson. And then they also were excited to know that we were working with the school to figure out who owned that dead space between Publix and the right-of-way there, because nobody will claim it. And so Publix is like, I don't know, and the school board's like, so we're trying to figure out who owns that. You could probably you figured that out already, no? Or you're trying to?
We should have the survey back by the end of this week.
Okay.
But we did ask for that information, so yeah, we'll know that.
Yeah, so we're all waiting.
And we're also, we've got elementary to do some survey work on Laurel Boulevard.
Yes.
Court.
Court. Because that's another potential access coming off of A1A for fire, coming out of the ward and come in from.
Yeah.
the
So we're negotiating literally an easement from the school board, so that even if one day they decided, because it's a flag lot, they actually own from Delora, that's not even a right-of-way up there, it's all property. It looks like, and it looks like a flag lot up until the private companies start there. And so they could, at some point, just say, we're tired of people driving through here. But if they ever did do that, the fire department would still be able to do that. So that's the.
Okay.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
A
I'm
lot
glad
of-
you're working with the principals and the board, because I think
Yes,
it's
sir.
important to get all of their input, because they're the ones living on site,
Yeah.
and
They're excited the fire department's moving there, and Public Works, because they get, it's a teaching thing for them. But they like the fact that we're going to improve that area, both Public and the school board. But it is a challenge because it's an old area and all the property lines are, we don't know who owns what right now.
The
So
center line of the road is the.
is actually the school board.
Yeah, of Jackson.
oh, wait a minute, we went through that whole thing when we put the fence back last time.
Yeah,
Beal says it's not done?
no, that's still owned by the school board, up to the middle of, the crown of the road, basically. Yeah. So they're giving us an easement.
He owes us money.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, when we went down to do that last time, when there was no sidewalk there,
Mm-hmm.
we had to move back enough far just to get one sidewalk in there. And the school board said, we don't do sidewalks, but they'll move the fence back for us. We went in at Orange Avenue, right there at Delora, Orange Avenue, and Jackson, and found out we didn't own a right-of-way. The school board had given to us.
Yeah.
And the idea was it was supposed to have been fixed. And I'm saying if it's not, let's just talk about this another time.
Is there any benefit in the neighbor people that are right there, the three houses across the street, the two businesses, to just keep them appraised on what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, we should be doing that, coming up when we get some sort of good design to show them. We want to get something to show them. But, they have put up with a lot that has been substantially maintained for a long time. And, a building that, the post office building that's been really, really bad. So they're excited to see, improvements that look better. And I think Jackson will be a big deal for them as well. So hopefully they'll be okay. And our fire and public works departments they're not noisy. So it's not like they're, intrusive.
Well, that depends.
I mean, the sirens are noisy, but
It's 7 o'clock every morning. Okay, so to wrap all this up, you'll get us agenda for the next meeting. Next meeting will be September 17th at 3 p.m. in here, same place. Does anybody else have any last comments?
And if anybody wants anything added to the agenda, if something comes up, email me.
If any more information you need,
Yeah.
just call.
Yeah. If you're driving along and say, hey, I just saw this building Google Earth to take a picture. And
This was a hard meeting because we didn't have really anything to show you yet, you know, because we're
Yeah.
trying to get information from you first, so,
We got a lot done, I
So
think.
Steve, thanks for bringing it.
yes.
Well,
Yes,
like I
that was
said,
very helpful.
I mean, that was kind of my idea, is I was trying to, I got the inspiration, my idea was just like, okay, so what do beach fire departments look like specifically? And that's kind of why I was trying to get that idea, because I figured that's where we were gonna go. And as you said, that's in our name, beach. So I was trying to reach that way. Well, if that's it, I'll adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in
Everybody in
say
favor,
aye.
stand.
Aye. That's it.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for
You're
sharing.
welcome.
Yeah, done. I'm gonna gavel it anyway.
You don't like to keep it on top of that.
Yeah.